Hi, you're tuned into AWANI Review. My name is Cynthia Ng. Today we will be taking a closer look at something that affects all of us, your credit report. Whether you're trying to apply for a loan or just checking your financial health, credit report plays a vital role. So joining me today is Erick Hamburger. He's the Group CEO of CTOS Digital Berhad, Malaysia's leading credit reporting agency. And Erick, in his role, leads the company in providing critical data to help individuals, businesses and lenders make informed financial decisions. So thank you so much, Erick, first of all, for coming on the show, and thank you for having us here at your office.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here, and happy to share everything about CTOS.
All right, so let's get started. I think to the general public, CTOS is widely known as a credit reporting company, but I think a lot of people might not fully understand the breadth of what you do. So perhaps we can start with that. Could you give us a quick overview of CTOS and the clients that you typically serve?
Sure, thank you. So CTOS is effectively a credit reporting agency, has been in the market as proudly a Malaysian-born company. We're now publicly listed, but we are originally founded by Malaysians and grown in Malaysia. Our purpose, the reason we exist, is to ensure that we empower both consumers and lenders to connect and make better informed decisions, and ultimately to provide credit. So if you think of us, everything we do, which is far beyond just the scores, we enable the entire life cycle of credit so that these two communities can connect. And when they connect, when you have access to credit, the economy grows, the individuals grow. And so it's a great purpose to have. It's what drives us at CTOS. So we started earlier in the years providing the data, so that lenders would know what's the relative risk of lending money to a borrower. And over time, we've expanded that role to ensure that we enable all the different components of it. So for example, when you're applying for a credit, many of the lenders will have a digital channel. That digital channel is powered by us. Be it the facial recognition with the IC, so the eKYC process, that's powered in many instances by us. We have fraud prevention software behind the scenes so that the banks can validate, or the lender can validate, if the person is effectively doing the right transaction. And then the origination software that's behind in the lenders is also provided by Sito. So we have expanded beyond just the data to enable a more comprehensive onboarding of that credit life cycle.
Okay, well, thank you for giving us that overview. We'll get into detail some of the aspects that you mentioned earlier. But I think I just wanted to try to illustrate for the audience in terms of, for instance, data that you collect. Could you talk to us about the sort of data that you collect, and how does it impact people day to day? For instance, when I'm applying for a housing loan, how does a credit assessment by CTOS help banks make that decision whether to disperse the loan or not?
Yeah, maybe I can take a step back in time. So before the Credit Reporting Act was enabled in Malaysia, and by the way, this is a policy that spans worldwide, every country has it. Before that existed, there was no transparency of information. Nobody centralized all the information for consumers or companies. Right. And so when a person would approach a bank for a loan, the bank would say, what's your collateral? What guarantee can you give me that you're going to pay back? Which limited significantly the access to credit. Then when the governments enacted, like Malaysian government enacted the CRA Act, it allowed then for all that information to be collected. And that information then becomes your guarantee, because it is a proof of your good behavior that mitigates the risk for a bank to lend you money. So that's why we exist as a company. And we collect all sorts of information. We have the secrets information from Bank Negara, where all the financial institutions provide the historic payments, the amount of the debt, the frequency of checks, new loans or closed loans, etc. We also collect SSM data from registrars, so for company information. We have litigation information. We can check also on directorship of companies or stakeholders in those companies. We have other sources of information from ETR, electronic trade reference. So if you have a loan with a auto dealer, if you have a cell phone account, if you have utility payments, all that is consolidated, and that becomes part of your credit history. With that information, then we derive a score, which is an analytics tool to help you identify how strong of your credit worthiness you have. And then for the lenders, it's the same information to assess the risk, the relative risk. So as a consumer, you and I, we need to be knowledgeable of what our history is and what our score is. Because if not, then you will surprise yourself the day you want to apply for credit. You're not prepared.
I think also, just picking up from your point, I think many people are worried that a negative credit score or report from CTOS could hurt their chances of, say, getting a loan. So I do want to get a sense of, do you think people fear credit reports because they just don't understand it enough? Or are there any misconceptions about CTOS that you may like to clear? Yeah,
there are several, and I think it's a fantastic point. Thank you, Cynthia. One thing you have to realize is the majority of the people have great payment behavior, great credit history, and that's the power that you have to approach a lender and get the best terms of that loan. So yes, of course, if you have bad history, it's going to affect you, and I'll go into that in a second, that it's not as bad as you might think. But if you see the positive side, a significantly larger portion of people have good credit history, which enables them to go to a financial institution and request a better term of their loan because they're credit worthy. And then on the other side, people are afraid typically because they say, oh, I didn't pay, I have an outstanding debt, that's going to impact my score. Sure, it does impact your score, but the second that you settle that, the second you know that you have that debt, because by the way, many people are not aware that they have an outstanding debt, but the second you settle it, your credit starts to improve. And it'll take some time, several months to reflect. But as soon as it's reflecting, then you're going to get an improvement in your score. So it's not the end, if you want, that you have an outstanding loan, but it's really important you take care of it. And knowing that, I know of many customers that are surprised and they come to us after they've been rejected in a loan because they didn't know that they had an outstanding payment, a small payment over time that they just forgot or weren't aware.
I think consumers are also a bit worried about data accuracy. For instance, how do you manage situations where consumers believe that their data is incorrect or is not timely? For instance, I pay my credit card bill today. How long does it take to get reflected? Because you said a few months is quite a long time, because when a bank wants to make a decision whether to give you that important housing loan, time is an important factor here.
And this is all regulated, which is the good benefit for the consumers. This is all regulated. Bankdata has regulations for the financial institutions on how they provide the data, as well as the registrar under the CRA Act have regulation as to how the data will flow from different parties to the credit reporting agencies like CTOS. So this is all regulated. Typically, you have a 30-day window for updating the information. But once we have confirmation, which is great for the consumer, there is a channel, which is CTOS, to be able to provide that information, and then very quickly, we have a window of 3 days where information is updated. So if you can show that you have paid and there is confirmation from the financial entity, we will act upon it immediately. And additionally, if you have any discrepancies, we're a great channel to then help you solve that with the financial institutions. And if in fact you had a mistake, we will facilitate that process with that institution. And if you didn't know, we'll validate that you do have that outstanding loan.
Okay. On that note, I do want to address a recent court ruling about CTOS not having the authority to formulate its own credit scores. What's the update on that? And could you talk to us about how has it impacted your operations, if you may?
Earlier in the year, we had a case where we had a lawsuit for defamation. Somebody was arguing that they had negatively been impacted by a score and an outstanding loan that was, in their concept, inaccurate. And during that case, the High Court ruled that CTOS did not have the authority to provide scores. So it cast doubt in our business model, right? And mind you, this act has been enforced since 2014, and we've been every year licensed and audited by the regulators, and we've renewed our license. And so during that process, we go through a very extensive revision of this accuracy of the data, of the time and the process to validate for anybody's complaints. And in this instance, we had validated with the company that provided that outstanding loan information that the person had an outstanding loan. So we appealed to the Court of Appeals, and we won this several months back. And it was ratified by the Court of Appeals that, like all CRAs, CTOS has the ability under the CRA Act and under the license to provide scores and other analytic processes.
But do you think this points to a larger issue of how credit rating is regulated? I think I'm trying to get a sense that you see that could be possibly more oversight on the industry because of such cases.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity to validate that we are adhering to the law and that the process works. So once you have knowledge of your information and you contact us, there's oversight from the regulators in terms of the time that we have to update the information, to go and validate with the lender, and to provide a comprehensive response or resolution. Just for giving you a sense of this, in 2023, we only had 0.01% of people contacting us about their credit information. And we resolved 100% of those cases. So it's a very small percentage of discrepancy, and all were resolved correctly. So it is a very robust process as it exists, and this case in the court allowed us to show how accurate and how good the process is.
All right, thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
Now, moving on, I do want to talk a bit about how consumer data management and also credit worthiness, how it's being assessed, because currently you assess traditional payments histories like credit card, loan payments. How important is it to include alternative data, for instance, to help give a better maybe a broader picture of how one spends their money and also how they manage their finances? For instance, we are now using a lot of our digital wallets. Is that something that you might look into in the future?
Yeah, definitely. And the more connected we become, right? Because digital world, we are using plenty of channels, and there's a lot of data from us that is not captured in the traditional models. Financial data continues to be the #1 predictor of credit worthiness, hands down, and this has been validated even in markets that are more advanced in the credit industry like the US or UK. But increasingly, alternative data becomes more important. And so we at CTOS have been building this. When I mentioned that we have captured information on your cell phone payments, on information on your utilities, if you have loans that are not bank related but are credit that you get that show that you're paying, like your motorcycle loan or your car loan, even retail loans, we're capturing all that data.
So what are retail loans? Could you explain that a bit more?
Yes, if you go and buy a TV in credit, and there are plenty of retailers now proactively selling in providing credit for these kinds of goods. We partner with them. They provide that data. And by the way, we capture not only the negative data that you have an outstanding payment, but also the positive. So again, this is very important because it helps build that credit, especially for the people that don't have a history, which is a significant portion of our population. So alternative data every day becomes more important. I even have solutions where I can validate the subscription TV subscriptions that I mentioned before. If you have an account of streaming accounts, that information is provided as well to our lenders so that they have a full picture, not just of your financial history, but all the things that you have engaged that demonstrate your credit worthiness. So this is increasingly more. And another very good example is we expanded into Philippines and Indonesia. Yeah. We'll talk more about that in a second, but in those countries, different from Malaysia, the percentage of unbanked population, people who do not have a bank account or credit, so there's no history of them, is quite large, 75% in the case of Philippines and 81% in Indonesia. Meaning, if you are one of those individuals, 1 in 4 and 5 in the case of Indonesia, and you go to a bank to get to apply for a loan, they're going to say, we don't know you. So there, we're using telco data to derive a credit score. There's a lot of information in your phone. We don't check all the information in your phone. There's a magic algorithm, if you want, that calculates the association between your behavior and the data that you have in your phone with credit risk. And that's used by lenders today in those markets, and it's alternative data.
Those without a formal credit history.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, with so much data at your disposal, at CTOS' disposal, naturally there will be concerns about how you use them, and data privacy and data hack, for instance, these cases are rising. So could you talk to us about what CTOS is doing?
Sure, and that's what keeps me up at night every day, ensuring that we have the right protection on our data. Not only because we are committed to ensuring the privacy and the security of the information for our users and Malaysians in general, but because we are regulated and we have oversight. We go through audit processes from Bank Negara and from the registrar to ensure that we have the standards, the highest standards in cybersecurity, and that everything complies according to the law. So it's not that we capture data without any controls. We capture data and has to follow certain rules to protect the citizen. So for example, we cannot share the information without specific consent from the consumer. So you will never see that I share your data with a lender if you don't have specifically given me consent for that. So we were very rigorous in the protection of the information. And then internally, we spend half of our capital expenditure in the company every year to make our systems more robust and more protected. And we benchmark ourselves against RMIT compliance of Bank Negara, which is a very high standard of how you protect the data. And we have just been certified ISO 27001 for information management security. So we take this very seriously because it's what we do. So this is the most valued asset, and it's the most important thing I have to do every day.
On the tech front, of course, we have to talk about this. AI has been the buzzword for so long, I mean, like the recent years. How is it transforming the data that you use? And how, I think my question is is CTOS leveraging that to help your customers make better financial decisions or more informed financial decisions?
So the first layer of AI, and you've seen it, it's even before generative AI, it was machine learning, but the first layer is how do you become more efficient? And we've incorporated this. As you can imagine, the amount of data we capture might come in the form of paper documents, financial statements from companies or individuals. So we have digitized all that information, and it used to be manual, and now it's using machine learning and capturing, which actually speeds up the process, makes it more efficient, and it also helps us identify errors that somebody might have made in the process. So it's more robust today. The second layer has to do with ensuring that we have a good connectivity with the consumer. So more and more, what we're trying to do is enable these AI bots to interact more and provide insights, both for the lenders as well as for the consumers. So we will incorporate more of this as we go along. But it's the equivalent of you checking, one of these ChatGPT or BART or any of these systems, and asking questions on your score. So that's the kind of thing that we are seeing that is possible. And then the third one is enhancing our products. And in enhancing our products, a very good example which we incorporated is our fraud bureau. So you don't know this, nobody typically knows this, but behind the scenes, when you apply for a credit in a major bank in Malaysia, the system that CTOS has behind the scenes captures all that information and checks to see if there's any discrepancy of information. A machine can do a better correlation of the data points and say, well, you said 6 months ago that you had 3 children, now you're saying you have 2, there's something wrong here, or you've changed your address frequently, or you have applied for credit many times in a very short period of time, and they do this consolidating hundreds of data points on millions of applications, so a human would have a hard time doing it. We have incorporated machine learning and AI to optimize this system.
Do you think AI could help in reducing bias in credit decisions, just capturing a broader consumer behavior instead of what's just seen on?
So the more data, and I think the basis of credit reporting agencies is the more data you can capture, the better the model will predict. Because at the end of the day, when you look at a lender, they're trying to mitigate their risk. And they have 2 things that they look at. Number 1, am I accepting the right people to give them credit? And number 2, are the terms that I'm giving the more accurate to the risk that person is providing? So the more information you have, the better that process is going to become. So I agree, this is going to be increasingly more as consumers provide data, as we can capture more information, it's going to enrich the process.
Okay. So just looking ahead, you mentioned about what keeps you up at night. So I do want to ask you as well, what keeps you excited about the industry? Perhaps you could talk about CTOS's possible new ventures and also a bit about your businesses abroad.
Yes, thank you so much. This is a really exciting time to be here. And I mentioned before, I come from the other side of the world. I'm Colombian, South America, and when I got this opportunity 3 years ago to join CTOS, it was the emergence of a great industry, and it's really exciting to be part of this. As I mentioned, our vision going forward is to expand our business in the ASEAN region, because we are a center of excellence in this country, proud to be a Malaysian company and leading the way in ASEAN. And so with the acquisition of these 2 companies, which has been really exciting, we see an opportunity to replicate what we have here into those markets. So more on the future.
Indonesia, Philippines at this point.
Yes, and a little bit of Singapore as well. We've started a greenfield operation in Singapore, but the bigger markets is Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. And I'm happy to share, for example, one of the KPIs is CTOS is now in a position to empower more than 400 million people to get access to credit.
Okay.
These are fantastic numbers. You can't get those numbers anywhere else in the world. And the industry is starting to get more robust. So we have digital players like the fintechs, buy now, pay later, now the digital banks. The retailers are growing. The telco companies are providing more credit for a new cell phone. So the market is evolving, and we're in the middle of this, so this is really exciting.
Okay. So with all this data that you have and the potential 400 million wide market, would you look into other areas of beyond credit reporting, for instance, like financial planning, or even like consumer education? Just trying to get a sense of what's next.
So I think we have a big runway still in the business that we run. We have our bigger clients are the financial institutions, telcos, insurance companies, and the SMEs and corporates that provide credit, not necessarily lending money, but providing credit. And then we're serving the end user. So you can go in our application or online and check your own score and monitor your own score. So we're doing a lot of financial education and awareness from our customers. You can register for free, get information for free, and then provide additional services like monitoring. And there's so much space still to grow that I think we will continue to be in our core business for some time. You know, if you look at fraud prevention, as everybody goes digital, this is just increasing. So we'll continue to expand in services around this type of.
And just finally, speaking about financial education, all that,
Yes.
right? So before we wrap up, what would be one of the practical advice that you would give to someone who's trying to improve their credit score, improve their financial security? I think particularly for people, you know, let's say someone who's just starting,
Yes.
who just started working and do not have much of a credit history. How do they go about it?
So the first thing I would recommend is know the power of data, the power of your information is very valuable. Know where you stand. If you do a check and there's no history on yourself, that's what's going to be reflected on a lender the day you want to get ready. One of the first things I did when I got here was get a loan. And it can be a small loan, and that's going to start the journey. So if you get a credit card, even if the amount is small, it starts to build your credit. And you're now in the radar, and the more time goes by, the better your score becomes if you pay on time. Then once you're aware and you monitor your credit, and again, you can do the checks for free at CTOS, and then upgrade as you see fit if you want monitoring services or other types of services. But build the credit. Be aware that the day you want credit, it's too late to start building it. So start knowing where you stand and then take the steps to get there. Of course, always pay your debt. Don't extend yourself. We see many people that, you know, you ask how are you going to pay this and say, well, I'll figure it out. Eventually it catches up. So you need to be aware of the extent to which you can get that credit. And then finally, the type of credit. The type of credit matters. So you start with a cell phone, you start with a small credit card, but then you will evolve into a car loan, or you'll evolve into a student loan, or you'll evolve into a mortgage. That mix is important as well, because it tells lenders that you are a more robust, credit-worthy individual.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Erick, for sharing your insights and the plans that you have for CTOS. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.